Well, so this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and this is the shir for the second day of the week of this week, the week of Parshas Mishpatim. Today is the day of Gevurah. So let's go see over here where we're talking about Gilgulim. I'm going to try to get into this a little bit because it's a subject that, well, we need to know what the end of our lives is like. Here we come. So we're on page Shin. Let me give you that page number. Is Shin Kaf Bet. We're starting in the Matik Medavash. We're going to read right through the Matik Medavash along with the Zohar. So Mamaska Rebbe Shimon the Parsha Pesukim. So Rebbe Shimon now is going to start working on the Pesukim of our Parsha. So he says Va'omar, and these are some of the words from our Parsha. It says Ki Sikne Eved Ivri She Shonim Ya'avod V'Shvius Yetze the Chavshei Chinum. So we don't have a direct translation, so let's see. When you acquire yourself a Hebrew slave, Shei Shana, for 6 years he shall serve you, and in the 7th year he should go out Chofshi, free, Chinam, for nothing. So let's see what he means by that. V'hiktim v'omer l'damidim. Now Rebbe Shimon has said this, and now he prefaces his words, Rebbe Shimon, to the Tamidim that are there. Chavri, he says to them, my students, Eden hocho l'golo kama razim timirim de Gilgul. So now, at the time that we're learning these pesukim, it's the time, the fit time, Lagalos kama sodos nistarim, to reveal many different secrets that have been hidden, shel al Gilgul hanirmazim kan, of the concept of Gilgul that are all referenced over here. Ba'omar, how do we know this? He should work for you for 6 years. He says, this is talking about what? Kad nishmasa is chayevet begilgula, that in the neshama of a person, because of the mistakes that the person ultimately made, is that therefore the Gilgul, the neshama is obligated to be misgalgal. Because Neshama shel Adam nischayev begilgul is being punished to be recycled. Ayedei havona she'asa b'chayev, because of the sins that he did while he was alive. V'az yisaken. So then, what we have here is a situation to prepared in base ofanim, 2 different ways. He said b'davar could be b'farish v'azol. So there's 2 different ways to look at this situation, as we are going to explain. So he says, V'achar kach, so after that, ki im hi mesitru da'ahu evet. Now, this takes a little bit of thought, so let's see what he's going to say. If the Neshama, and remember, as I've told you before several times, that the Neshama refers to the light of the Ein Sof, and it's a certain aspect of the light which is very deep. And it is inside of the concept of Ruach, which is inside of the concept of Nefesh. So all of these are the lights of the Ein Sof that are really the basic, the ultimate energy that's making things happen. So let's go over here. Now this is an important thing to me. If it comes from the concept of the slave, that particular slave who is found in the Olam of Yitzira, Shuhu Malach Matat. Now we don't pronounce the name any other than like this. We don't say the whole name out. I don't anyway, not what I heard. He's called Matat. Hanikra Eved Ivri, who is called the Hebrew slave. He is in fact the Hebrew slave, the Malchus of Atzilus. Now this is not explained, and I would like to hear more. The concept of Matat, he is the concept of the Vok of the Olam Yetzirah. Olam Yetzirah is related to Zer Anpin, who is the Vok. So this is like the essence of that. But he's telling me something else that I want to keep in mind. He says that this is a slave or servant. What does he serve? He serves the Malchus of Atzilus, because it is he that is in charge of bringing the manifestation of the light of Atzilus through Malchus into the Nukva Zer Anpin. So therefore we see that he says he's a slave, he's indentured to the Malchus of Atzilus to do her bidding. The Ihu Kolil Shis Sitrim, that he himself has 6 sides to him. Shuhu Kolil Shesha Kitzvais. He has 6 sides to him. They call him 6 corners. Shehem Klalus Olam Yetzira, and they all incorporate the whole concept of Olam Yetzira, which we have said previously. Olam Yetzira could refers to the letter Vav of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's the connection between Olam Abriya, which is the first Hey, and Olam Asiya, which is the second Hey. So he said, the Vishuhu Bechinas Zer Anpin, Behu Kolel Vok. This is what I said earlier. Because the aspect of Zer Anpin is basically 6 spheros, not 10. So let's go on. Behind the Sheneshamazu Nimshechas La'adam Bezivug Na'asa B'mosachol. This is very important, so that if those of us who are learning at the same time, the Rav over here, and he's saying that the basic thing that we are trying to do, and there's a rabbi that comes through here, there's a Taimani rabbi by the name of Rabbi Shar, and he's not here right now. I can't get out of Israel. But he comes here, he's a Mekubal. One of the things you say hello to him, he says, what Yehudim did you do today? If you were in the grocery store, he said, you make Yehudim with the things that you bought? And I said, I don't really know how to do that. I really never thought about that. But we've learning here that there are 2 different kinds of Yehudim, basically is the weekday Yehudim and the Shabbos Yehudim. So he says, this Neshama that we're talking about, let me go back. A yichud that takes place between Zohar and Nog, but during the weekday. Then there's an interesting idea. I didn't know this. So he says that during the weekday, the Neshama has its origin. Neshama is basically the concept, just like Ruach is associated with Zer Anpin, and Nefesh is associated with not Zer Anpin, but Olam Yetzira, and Nefesh is associated with no Olam Asiya. So Bria is also associated with the concept of Neshama. So you have Bria is inside of Yetzira, and Yetzira is inside of Asiya. And you could also say it the way I just had mentioned, how Neshama is inside of Ruach, and Ruach inside of Nefesh. It's the same kind of idea of the clothing of the light. So let's go on. It's a Kasif base, so it's written regarding to this. Ben Neshama Kazu, like in this Neshama. Shei Shanim Ya'avod. Ratzon Alo Gilguli Dilo. That the Gilgulim Shehit Tzaricha Lehis Gadol Lagadol. L'kadei l'sakein avodasechu. So he's saying like this: a neshama which is created from a yichud that takes place in Olam Yetzira, or Olam, the Olamos of Bia. In other words, the lower Olamos. It has a possibility of coming back 6 different times. So therefore, that's why it says it only has 6 years, as we've seen in the Zohar and other places, that the concept of years is also a concept of the 6 spheros as their anpin. So he said, so only 6 times does a person have to come back. But if that is to say that if a person is not able to correct his mistakes in the first Gilgul, this Gilgul owed ad sheish pamim, he could be coming back and recycled 6 different times. That's according to the creation of his soul, which was created in Olam Bia. That Bia, not Abia, Bia. The Ashlima Sheish Dargim Mahahu Asa the Ismanatilis. Ad Shemeshalemes, Sakenis, until it perfects and rebuilds. Sheish Hamadrego Shel Osa Hamakom, the 6 different levels of that place. Shall Nekachov Nechsivah that where it was taken from that place. In other words, Olam. Here he's talking about the Vok of Olam Yetzira. It says that ultimately that it's taken out of that place until it fixes that place. Shehem Hechelo Shal Olam Yetzira. So here we're talking about the concept of the 6 different levels of Yetzira, also called chambers or palaces. Let's call them palaces. So he says, Kolo Shal Olam Yetzira. So Sheish Spheras Chagadnai. So let's just go the concept of 6. So we have the 6. So the 6, these 6 years, 6 spheros. So which of the 6 spheros? Chagad Nai, Chesed Gevurah Teferes Netzachod Yisod. Now, To thicken the plot a little bit, the Matuk is going to bring us a little more explanation of the explanation that he has in this parenthesis. He says, let's look at it like this. Ki chesed mislavish behechel avo. Now this is the places where we understand the palaces in which the midos are lodged. Gevurah mislaveshes behechel zechus. Teferes mislaveshes behechel aratzon. Netza mislaveshes behechel noga. Hod mislaveshes behechel etzem v'shemayim. And Yesod, which also in other places the Rab brings that it's also malchus. And mislaveshes behechel livnas asapir. Oh, he does say that, and the malchus is part of it. So that's that too. Okay, so let's go on. He said, he says in these 6 spheros, the 6 spheros that we find in Olam Yetzirah, which once again we say this corresponds to Zer Anpin, who is the 6 spheros. He's a vak. Ki mitzvos aseh besod hayomim hein b'chesed. He says the mitzvahs say, which we understand is on the right side of the concept of chesed. Mitzvahs lo say besoda small, so the negative commandments are on the left side. Heim begevurah, they're in Gevurah. So he said v'chatiferes hu haTorah kulo v'nahi heim tanach. So let's see v'chatiferes. That refers to the whole concept of Torah. Right side, left side. It balances in the middle by the Torah. Of a nai heim tanach. So then the nai, so now we have the chagat, which we just explained right, left, and the middle is Torah. Now you have the netzach hod yesod, which is the nai. They correspond to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. So the pasuk itself is speaking strictly about the body. And it says to the body, Ketikna ata haguf, when you rebuild. Ata, you, the body. Eved ivri, and you are like a slave. Hailo neshama ba'olam yetzirah. So understand that olam yetzirah is the habitation of this special malach who is in charge of distributing, I guess, into the lower world where we live, all those commandments that come from Olam Atzilut. So he says, going back again, he said, and it says that the body can take na ata haguf, eved ivri. That is, you become an eved ivri. That the neshama means that you came from olam yetzirah. Hanikra eved, which is also called by the name of eved. Shei shanim ya'avod. You should work for 6 years for this. Pirish neshama zu yechol this galgal, that this neshama could come along and be reincarnated again at Sheish Pa'amim. That is for that neshama that is created out of the lower world. Im lo zachsa the histakein b'pam rishayna, if it's not able to be rebuilt in the first time. But tzrika la'avor shivud malacha, so therefore you have to get back into being indebted, into working in this world, the Yisurim and all the different kinds of pains and punishments, and the really, also amongst it is the lack of knowledge, is that we really don't know where we're at or what we're doing. He said, so he says, the Yisurim, v'choloyim, v'dalos, v'tilt, v'tiros, so he says, the Yisurim and pain, and sicknesses, and poverty, v'tiltal, and being pushed around, v'tarof, and being beaten up, b'zeha olim, kedei l'sakein avanasecho, in order to be able to purify those sins. So now we learned a little bit more about this. This is the 2nd day of the week of Parshas Mishpatim. It's the day of Gevurah.